Great. Hello and welcome to the webinar today. This is Monica Wheaton and I'm with Builder Partnerships. We're very happy to have you here. Today we're doing Top 6 Reasons Builders Bleed Variance, presented by Ed Hauck. He's a senior consultant with Builder Partnerships, and Alex Zbik. Sorry, Alex, if I killed your last name. He's a sales engineer with ECI Software Solutions. We are very excited to have ECI Solution Software here. They are a service provider member of Builder Partnerships. And just a quick introduction for Alex. He's a sales engineer, like I said. ECI has helped hundreds of small to medium-sized businesses reach their growth potential. With MarkSystems ERP software, they empower residential builders and developers with the tools they need to compete with larger companies and become dominant players in their local markets. Alex started his career working for his father's home building business, managing construction schedules and trade partners in addition to purchasing and accounting responsibility. And today, Alex, with Ed, will share the top 6 ways home building businesses bleed variance and how to stop the bleeding. Are you ready, Alex?
I am ready. Thank you so much, Monica.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ed. Great talking to you. Ed and I have worked on many projects together. Ed even got to meet some of my family members. We were at a Builder Partnership event in St. Louis. My Aunt Paula stopped by. Ed got to meet her. So Ed and I, we worked together for a while. A lot of projects, very familiar. Good morning, Ed. Glad to have you today.
Thank you, sir. You get up that slide with our faces on it.
Exactly. All right.
Please.
Everyone's here today because we're going to be talking about variance, focusing on the 6 main reasons where builders are bleeding variance. So I thought maybe it is a good way to start, Ed, just get us all on the same page. What exactly is variance and how it relates to the home building industry?
Well, Chuck always calls variances noise in the operation, but variances are exceptions to goals, objectives, plans, budgets. It's usually cost overruns, and it really just leads the operation out of cash or time. So, and we have basically 6 major categories of variances. Financial variances occur in the operation, construction variances, schedule variances, sales and closing variances, customer service variances, and quality variances. They're all important, and it's important to look at and manage all of those variances. And once you dive into it, we'll talk about how we do this, in the operation. And you want to manage those variances. You want to eliminate them as much as possible. The one we're going to talk about the most is the construction variances, the cost variances. The construction costs is the largest category in the operation. I know all of my purchasing staff that are on the line now feel this pain. So, and on the construction variances, typically, depending on what market you're in, you're between 50 and 60% of the sale price is in cost variances. Next slide, please, Alex.
Yeah, and I think it's great points that you mentioned there, and I think it's really important. Yes, we're going to be focusing a lot on variance, but of course, up front, we need to really, get in and control our direct construction costs, and that has a big impact on this as well.
Yeah, and part of the reason why Alex and I work together is a lot of times as we're working with builders, Alex is running the MarkSystems, building the data and all that stuff. And then what happens is, this is how he and I end up working together. So it's like I said, it's the largest classification of cost. It has the most variance of cost in the operation, increases the marginal rate of profitability. You've got to continually monitor this stuff, your variances at all times. We talked about this at attacking this on all fronts. The builder that Alex and I were working with for a while started out with some fairly significant variances, and we just kept driving and determining what's the cause of the variances. There's a lot of ways to look at this stuff. You can I want to look at coding by department. The one thing's very important: you never have a miscellaneous category because that'll be the big dumping ground. Okay. Variance purchase orders are extremely important to use. We'll talk a little bit about them later on. Alex has got some great examples. I'm a big fan of variance meetings. I don't want to have like a 3 or 4 hour meeting once a month to talk about these things. Depending on the size of your operation, if you're a large operation, this should be daily. On most mid-sized builders, you're in a good place with your variances. It becomes weekly. I even did my variance meetings as go-to meetings, so I don't have to bring my guys out of the field. I want to talk about that variance. If I see a variance in the operation and it's a large variance, I should make that phone call right away. The more you monitor these things, the faster they'll go away. Okay.
And Ed, can I interrupt you there for a quick second?
Absolutely.
You mentioned, larger and smaller size, and talking about daily and how often we should be monitoring it. Can you give us a little clarification on what you're determining as a larger or a smaller size builder?
A very good question. If I'm working with a builder that's doing 500 homes a year, I'm going to have a whole pile of homes in progress at any one point in time. If I'm that size builder, I'm going to literally be doing variances daily. A smaller builder, let's say 100 to 200 homes a year, and my variances are in good shape, I still want to do that weekly. I don't want to be looking at 1,000 variances. Alex and I worked with a builder in Atlanta, and they were processing 500 variances a week. 500 variances in a review meeting on Friday is just too much to deal with. When we broke it down daily, it was 100 variances, and we can drill down. In a very short order, we got them from 500 variances on a weekly basis down to 250, down to 100 a week. At that point in time, they weren't daily; they were weekly meetings. But very good question, Alex. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
A couple things. I want to also document an action plan with every variance. Okay. Later on in this segment, Alex will get into some documentation through the MarkSystems. Next, please.
Right. So, also think it's important to talk about how we can eliminate some waste and excess material usage that we're just getting too much of.
Absolutely. It's kind of funny. As soon as the last job Alex and I were on, he's working with the system, determining and drilling down through the information. I took a field walk, and the trash pile was a huge point of concern to me. I could see excess materials. Positive variances are as important as negative variances, okay? It's just the beginning of things. Diverting material. Watch the excess material without good reason. Also, make sure any material that's left over is returned. Later on, we'll see some pictures of material laying around. It's very important to have a process to document and return them. Through using a good system, I can actually just say, I'm returning 10 2x10s and return them, take the credit right off the top, and Chuck says 24 hours, I give the guys 48 hours. But it's important to get that stuff returned.
Right. So obviously, really important, you have to gain control of the construction slippage. Construction slippage ties right into variance, and it can really add a lot of extra cost. So talk to us about how we can gain that control.
Well, fill-in orders are killers. Fill-in orders kill the trades. It slows them down, slows down cycle time, dry runs, that kind of stuff. It really kills our production. So I want to document those fill-in orders and make sure the estimate's proper. Make sure it's right. If I'm light on the estimate or heavy, I want to track that. What you have to determine the cost. Later on you'll see some reports. I'm sending out a lumber load for my one particular house style. At some point in time, is it the lumber load or is it the framework? Is it the job? We'll talk about that. Maintain a chart of variances. We have codes for that, and you'll see later on we have a whole lot of different reason codes, and then we can sort by the reason codes. And then usually what I'll do is I'm going to drill down the vendor number and determine if one framer is the cause of all my problems.
Right. So that kind of ties in right to our next slide. What's the best ways? How are we viewing these variances?
Again, I like to have my variance meetings in a timely manner. If my variances are in order, I'm doing them weekly. I like looking at them on Thursdays towards the end of the week, talk about them. I'm going to have management report systems that are automated, that I'm going to do this every single week. And a lot of times my field guys don't want to see this book of reports. I want to see very concise, easy reports to read. And I also want to make sure that there's accountability. A lot of times we're working with builders, they're documenting, but there's no accountability. I need to have that meeting, and it's not a horrible meeting. It's a team meeting. I want to make this a we kind of a thing. It's not purchasing against estimating. It's and estimating against the field guys. You have to work together. The sooner I can document these things in the field, the faster I can eradicate it. Every time I eradicate it, I don't have to do it again. I just reduce it. So accountability is key.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Accountability, documentation, important stuff. I think a large reason we got, such a nice class, such a nice attendance today is, people really want to know how to stop these variances. That's really important. So talk to me a little bit about how we can stop some of this variance that's coming in.
Again, accountability, it's not a blame game. I want to talk about, drill down in the problem. And once it's not a blame game, I want to go talk to this framer who's responsible for the problem. I have 4 framers building the same house, and one framer is always killing it. What's he doing? How do I prevent this? A lot of times, I want to have a meeting and discuss this. Variance meeting can be in multiple ways. Like I said, I like doing go-to meetings with my supers. I don't want to take them out of the field. I want to have a quick meeting with them. To the example we're talking about now on this lumber load, it was one framer. Once we sat down with this framer and talked to him, he was cutting up parallems, the long parallems in the little pieces. Then he says, I don't have a garage header. You have to actually discuss it. Like I said, it's not a blame game. It was a very good meeting. I sat down with him. We discussed the problem. I showed him the lumber load, showed him the usage, and guess what? We eliminate the problem. A lot of it is just having an open dialogue.
Yeah, it sounds like, it's good time for, use case for, learning. And hopefully those mistakes aren't being made again, because that's when we really have a problem. Like you said, we don't want to blame them. We want to educate so that the next time it doesn't happen again. And that's why that communication is so crucial. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, Alex, you're right. The education, the sharing the knowledge, that's why I'm going to track this data. And then I don't need this data tracked and housed in a report sitting on a shelf. I've got to get that out there and figure out who needs to see it, how they need to see it, and then hold them accountable.
Right. And that really brings us to our next section. Yeah, reporting. So go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Wow, you jumped right to it. The reports are critical. In most operations, the reports are critical. So when I'm working with Alex, I need Alex to train my team not only how to report, how to drill down, how to look at the information. So Alex got a lot of nice variance codes and reports here. Can you run us through this report for us, Alex?
Yeah, all I'm looking at right here, this is just our cost code listing. So, one of the things that we like to do is we like to break out base costs separate than option costs and separate than variance cost. And we like to keep those variance coding consistent through all the trades, because that's where it really has a big impact on the reporting. I can report upon the trade, I can report upon the type of variance just by our cost codes. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get a little bit further into the demonstration here, to the PowerPoint. But yeah, we really like to break that cost out separate. Makes it very easy to identify, very easy to see.
Very good point. The consistency on how to drill down this is very important. The next is you're grouping these by time period. In my case, on a weekly report, I want to look at this week. Reason codes are huge. I want to know the reason. For example, this framer was not being charged off properly. They were using the reason code theft. But I only have theft when I'm using with one particular framer. How's that working? And we determine it was by usage. A lot of times I'm going to go by department. Is it the purchase department? Is it, what it is? And like I said, it's not a blame game. I just want to identify our estimates are not accurate. Why? Oh, I didn't factor in waste. That's critical. I also looked at by community and project. Like I said before, the vendor number is key for me. Sometimes drilling down that every other style house is fine. It was one vendor. Another way I can look at superintendents. My best superintendents will probably have the lowest ratios. My superintendent's got too much windshield time because he's not on site. They have the bad ratios. This isn't. It's not a blame game. I want to identify the problem and figure out. Hey, my superintendent's got 40% of his time is driving. That just doesn't work right.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Here's just a couple examples of some reporting and some dashboards that you can do with MarkSystems. We're going to talk a little bit more about these in a later section, but we just want to make sure that we're tying in, how we're talking about the reporting, the different ways of reporting, and having a system that can kind of tie this all in. And really important is tying it, purchasing in with the accounting. That integration is so important because we talked about the different cost codes and using different ranges for variance. Well, that's when an integrated accounting system really gives you a lot of ability.
What I like here in this visual, Alex, is that top left section is great for the office, somebody in accounting going through line item by line item. The bottom right is extremely visual, and I tell you what, when I'm working with my guys in the field, talking weekly, and then when I talk monthly with them, and I get this big picture, this gives you the visual and really sets the tone. It's very easy to read, and I don't need the top left is great, but the bottom right is how I can communicate effectively and quickly with my guys.
And that's a great point, because I can use the bottom right, which is the dashboards, to see visually, some information, and then I can run a report to drill down into it and get the details. And you hit that right on the head there. Yes, very, very
awesome.
true. So talk to me a little bit about how we can stop some variance and how it really impacts live operations.
Like I said, Chuck always says you want to eradicate the variances in the operation. You want to get the noise out of the operation. The variance review meetings, I said, are critical. Plan review meetings. A lot of times what we don't look at is it a certain plan causing problems? Is it the design of the plan? The builder, the Alex and I were working on, we just had one house that it was drawn by a different architect. Once we realized it was some of the information in the plan was the problem. Quality meetings. Is there a quality problem? At a certain point in time, I want to eradicate. If I have a bad trade, I'm going to pick on painters for a second. I've got a bad trade. What is it? Is it one crew? What's the deal? I want to treat my quality extremely. It's very important in the operation. My quality is what gives me my referrals. Every time I get a referral, I just save the realtor fee. I love my realtors. Don't get me wrong. Any realtors on the call. However, every time I get a referral, I'm saving 3 to 5%. The job start order it's huge. The referral, so the quality is big. Right now, that's a whole nother seminar on quality. Start orders are important. I was working with a builder recently, and their start order was so complex. It was unbelievable. You couldn't figure anything out. What am I building? The estimate and the purchase orders are important. That's huge in getting everything out to the field so that's clear and concise. And then releasing purchase orders is very clerical in nature and should be done very quickly and get them out as soon as you can. That way it's going to hold your pricing. Right now, with all our cost increases, I want those POs out the door ASAP.
I don't know. I'm curious. Do you still work with any trades that or any builders that aren't issuing purchase orders, that are still doing all manual invoicing? Is that something that you're still running into?
Yes. Unfortunately, I've got a few builders that are in conversion with a system like yourself are having a hard time saying my trades aren't used to POs. That does come up, and usually that's another series of meetings. POs have been out for a very long time. Every market I go to, like, well, you don't understand. That's not how we do it. Once everybody figures out how easy purchase orders are to deal with, it's easy to meet with the trades and get them going. So, yes, we still see that, believe it or not. And lately, recently, I just saw somebody who was accepting the invoices and then matching to POs. What a waste of time.
Yeah. All right, probably a good time to move over to our next section here. All right, so I think this is where we're going to kind of start talking about how, it's important to have a variance control system. So, in my opinion, you can kind of tell me what you think, Ed. Having a PO system to be able to do VPOs is great, but can really be taken to the next level by not only having a PO system, but also having one that integrates with an accounting system. So using specific cost codes, like we kind of already talked about, for variance makes it very easy to identify variance immediately when looking at any job cost reports. It jumps out at you. If it's not being coded to a specific variance code and is instead being coded to a base cost code, it becomes really challenging to analyze during construction. The integration of a purchasing accounting system in one database allows you to be proactive instead of reactive, which is really, really important.
Agreed. When we're working with builders, one of the first we do is ask for some of the preliminary budgets and information. Usually this can point me right in the right direction to go find the lowest hanging fruit. So Alex did a good job of talking about the having a solution in place. Obviously, he works with the MarkSystems. They have a very good solution. The reports and dashboards, I love that dashboard. Very clear, concise, gives me a good visual of where I need to go. I want to go for the lowest hanging fruit first. Once you start getting the lowest hanging fruit, everybody's going to see the value of doing this. And then you get a lot of times as we're bringing a system on, I've got to get buy-in, get everybody understand it. So that really helps. And integration into accounting is typical. And then again, the other thing we make sure we want to talk about is this helps us control or reduce our cycle time.
Oh, right. Yeah, great point. All right, so I mentioned, we saw these reports in the other slide, and I said I was going to talk about them a little bit later, and this is probably a good time. So first I want to mention, I know we have a lot of our MarkSystems customers on this call, as well as a lot of builder partnership members. But if you are a MarkSystems user and you're not utilizing any of these dashboards, or if the reports don't look familiar because you aren't using the Quick Build report writer, please get in contact with your professional services team to schedule some training. If you're unsure of who to contact, of course you can reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with the right person. But let's really talk about the reports here. So, like I mentioned in a previous slide, it's crucial to have the ability to run those variance reports by many different factors. I want to be able to run them, by time period, by variance or reason, by community, by vendors, by department, even by super. And with the way we do things with our internal build-in report writer, you have the capabilities to run variance reports on any and all of those factors. So that's what the thing on the left, upper left, that's our one of our variance reports that we created through our build-in report writer. So it gives me the ability where I can run it by company, by development. This is specifically for Eagle Ridge, specifically for a cost code. So I can really drill down any way that I want to and run these reports to get that information. And then we have what we saw on the bottom right, the more visual representation, our dashboards. And, really critical to see the same information in a more visual representation, like a dashboard. I can easily see my variance by legal entity, by community, development, by type, vendor, by category, by cost code, and then we can take some action after we start drilling down into this.
That report is critical, Alex, because it gives me a clear path of what I want to go dive into. All those larger slices of pie are the most important thing to go drill into. The other thing is, by this report, I can start cross-referencing where my problems are.
Yeah.
So that's critical.
Exactly.
And like I said the visual. So when you guys showed me this report a few months ago, that is awesome. Now, do you send this out? How do you guys usually utilize this report?
Yeah. So, it can be sent out. What's nice about our reports, they all get generated in PDF format by default. They can go to Excel if you wanted it to, but because they're PDF format, they're very easy to send. I can email to multiple people. So yeah, or we're having those meetings like you mentioned, whether it's a daily meeting or a weekly meeting, and now we're pulling up on the screen as we're going through these meetings and really going line by line item through these reports, through these dashboards of what the items are, so we can address them and get them corrected. So we build this house the next time it is dialed down and buttoned up.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah. So, everything we've been talking about is, directly related to the variance purchase orders. Well, obviously, and Ed mentioned this in a previous slide too, important to have a purchase order system. So just a couple examples of, things I can do. The upper right is my lumber list bid sheet. So I can put together a bid sheet that we can send to the trades, to the vendors, and they can submit their pricing. We can import it into the system very quickly, very easily. And that can generate purchase orders. So on the left, here's an example of a standard purchase order. Once again, the cost, the way we break it out, it's specific to base, to option in this case. We have our base framing material, and then we have some options. And then we have all of our products and our quantities and our use code, telling everybody in the field how the products are being used. So some really important information. And then once we accept these bids and have them in the system, we can, of course, do a bid analysis. Now, here I'm comparing my window purchase orders for a couple different vendors. I want to see 84 lumber separate than Builder's First Source and see who's more expensive. And it's pretty close in this case, but I can easily run a report and see those differences and those comparisons.
One thing I want to point out, Alex, yeah, it was pretty close, but keep in mind, every time, one thing that Chuck always preaches is on the purchase order system, I want to drill down and do this unit by unit pricing. If I was doing bid management lumber and I'm comparing these two different trades, both very good trades, by the way, I'm comparing both trades. I don't know, is it the lumber list is different or is the price is different? Alex and I just converted somebody just recently. This database is very easy to create. We converted somebody on a $30,000 lumber pack just by getting clarity. They found 5 points, $1,500. just by going to bid management. It gets even better than that because as time goes on, I can take this lumber list and put trades side by side and say, if I just found 50 cents a sheet on OSB, count that up. How many sheets of OSB in the house and how many homes a year that I'm going to do? This is huge in helping us reduce the cost. But that's an awesome point, Alex.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. And once again, we kind of talked about, variance purchase orders. It is very similar to a purchase order. Okay. But, it's additional information. It's a different type of cost code that we're using. Once again, just showing us these list of reasons, how, a couple examples of what we like to do, and the big thing there, once again, keep them consistent through all the trades.
The one thing I want to point out that I don't know if everybody notices, it's like a normal PO. All the information is there, everything I need, community, job, super, all that stuff, and it's a specific VPO number that gets paid like a purchase order. I do like all that information, so that's a great illustration.
And then, we always think it's really important, to be able to give the superintendents and your project managers out in the field the tools to make it easy to put a VPO request in. It wasn't that long ago. I know that, I used to work for a builder, maybe 10 years ago, that, we were doing all our VPOs with carbon copies, a pink, a yellow, and a white copy that went to the vendor or to the office or to the field. Not a really efficient way, because having the ability to pick the appropriate variance cost code from a drop-down list or pulling in products from a drop-down list that is already tied to vendor pricing can really replace those days of the carbon copies. The way we do things, we allow the supers to do all of that directly from a tablet or a phone as they're on the job site. And having the ability to set the limits for the different superintendents is also meaningful. If it needs to get approval from a manager, having an integrated system allows for automatic communication and notification between the field and management before it even gets to the trade. So, this is just a couple screenshots here from our portal, how I can quickly and easily pull information in. On the right-hand side, you're seeing, I have those same variance cost codes, and I'm only seeing the variance cost codes when I'm doing a variance purchase order in our system. I don't have the ability to put it to a base or an option cost code. We want to make it as easy as we can for everybody out in the field so that we can do this, and, we can set limits and routing and all different kind of things so that we can really define a process for when we're doing these variance purchase order requests.
I have two quick comments on this. One,
yeah.
Alex's comment about the old-fashioned paper one. When we had the old-fashioned paper one, the guys in the field, and by the way, my start in this career was out in the field. We're under the gun. We're under the pressure. So having the superintendent with that complete ability is just a blank checkbook. To Alex's point, this is a request. I really want somebody in the office looking at that request and going, wait a minute, this is something that's in somebody's scope. We shouldn't be paying this. Or wait a minute, I already sent that parallel out. Do we know if it's there? So that's I like that control. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, picture time.
I know Ed's excited for this part.
It was. Well, Alex is diligently working in the office. He's working with this builder, and like I said, I walked out in the field, and this was the parallels left over from a previous building. They had over ordered. Again, an example of a positive variance. I want this stuff documented and returned. So what we did is I called Alex and we showed the builder how to literally just measure these things up, figure out where they came from, and we identified that they had way overestimated. This is a large building, by the way, a big townhouse building. So, but anyway, we pulled out a couple $1,000s of a positive variance in this scenario. Here's another one where it was just waste, too much waste. We start realizing this is actually the scenario I was telling you before about bid management. We didn't know what was in the bid. You can't tell. It's this giant sum of material. We couldn't tell what's in the bid. There's dumpster after dumpster of extra material. Once we went to the itemized list and got down, these were all positive variances, and the lumber numbers were high. Like I said, $1,500 a unit were too high. A lot of it was material. So, again, it's very important to get out in the field. Very important to look at things. We talked about how to sort by plan. This is a dumb little thing. They have all these power limbs for a point load, and guess what? There was no point load. The point load was right on top of the header. They had all these power limbs on the plan. Again, have your plan review meetings. Make sure that each plan is profitable.
I got one more.
One more. Again, same similar situation. I'm out in the field, called Alex up. This house, this is just one picture. We could do this forever. This house must have had a couple $1,000s in material everywhere we looked. Again, police your job site. Look at them. These were all positive variances where the lists were high. What the builder was thinking was they were covering themselves by putting too much material out there. If we didn't go into the system and literally in our variance review meeting, I had Alex, we gave him the quantity. Not only did we ship it back, but Alex went into the system and took this material off the lumber list and off all the houses that were in the system so it doesn't happen again. So it's important to have that communication. Again, both these builders we showed you pictures of, we're working as a team. So it's a good reason to make sure you're walking your houses and you're working together as a team.
And once again, just tying it all back in. It's not about blaming. It's about educating. And yes, are there things that we see in these pictures that we don't want to see? Of course. But we have to use them as educational moments, and that they just can't keep repeating. We really want to get these corrected so they don't happen again, and that's really what we're trying to do here.
Good point.
All right. So now that we had some pictures, let's get back in and let's start talking about how we can lower some direct construction costs and get away from some of that bidding. Again,
I mean, we with this particular builder that Alex and I were working with, we got into accurate estimating. We went away from the bid management, took control of a good accurate estimate. Worked with the estimating department and the trades in this case to get the most accurate estimate possible, and then the estimates implemented through the purchase order system. At that point in time, purchasing would go out and negotiate the pricing for the lumber. Again, when we had that comparative analysis, we went through with 3 very good trades. There was literally the same list. Now I can drill down and figure out which ones are really the best deal. It's not muddy water. It's very simple. So again, it's the basis for keeping our cost and controls in place. And this is how I want to lower our direct construction costs. This particular builder, by doing this, through probably 40 different trades, we found a few $1,000s in cost without changing quality, quantity. It was just managing everything and drilling down.
All right, once again, just tying it back into the last couple of slides, having that purchase order system, having the ability to do the bid analysis, really, really important. All right, let's talk a little bit about how we can fine-tune some of this. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Ed.
The bid analysis, I think, is one of the most important tools you can do. It's very easy to automate it. It's awesome. So that's that bottom right slide. Again, in a lot of different ways. If I have all that unit pricing, it's easy by piece and negotiate from there. The next slide really starts talking about, I call it the audit process. In the audit process, I say this house needs 300 sheets of OSB. The framers, thinks it needs 350. What's right? I do this all the time with roofing, siding, all kinds of quantities. I do the estimate. I think I'm right. I'll share it with them. We'll talk about it. But when I go out, I want to audit the house the first couple of times I build it. Custom builders, don't have that luxury. And it's very important at that point in time to audit it and make sure that your methods are accurate in keeping the cost down. The quality control is critical. That usually ties back into scopes. I'm a big fan of counting on materials. I find it hard to believe builders drop a $30,000 pile of lumber on the ground and nobody counts it and just assumes it's right. If you've ever been in a lumber yard, you won't believe how easy it is to miss a piece of the bundle and it sits back in the yard and you can't imagine why you're 30 sheets short of something. So we're firm believers in auditing materials as they get delivered. A lot of lumber companies now take a picture of it at delivery. I want either my super or a framer or someone to audit most of these things as they're coming in. Don't move materials. This is critical. That lumber pile I showed you last time, I don't want to move that from one site to the next. I want to get it out of the estimate. I want to get that money back, and I want to correct that estimate. Moving materials around usually starts to really muddy our estimates, and I can never figure out where I am. So take your lumps up front and send the material back. Okay.
Yeah. Just want to echo what you said, about the auditing and the spot checking and material deliveries. I find that so often also. It's really surprising how many people are not, and it's so important. Just by doing that, you're already fine tuning if you're not doing that today. So yeah, really, really important.
Yeah, I have it in my framer scopes of work. My framer, the day he's coming to snap lines, also will audit that. It's in his best interest to make sure that lumber's there. And once you audit a package a few times, you get used to doing it. And if your POs are accurate, it's become very simple job to do.
Yeah. All right, probably a good time to kind of switch gears, and let's start talking about some general rules and some best practices when it comes to variance. So yeah, let's just kick it off with some general rules and best practices here.
Again, we start touching on this on star packages. A complete star package going out is critical. A lot of times it's on a web portal. Alex can touch on that. Pre-con meetings. Pre-con meetings. If I'm doing a new community, I want to have a huge pre-con meeting. Talk about how all these trades are working together. I want to introduce them to each other. Good drawings. Chuck and I believe that good drawings can be 5% of my direct construction costs, easy. And that's just not materials. That's also labor. The builder I was working with this week, I pulled out the plans. I don't know how they built the plans. It's unbuildable that way. So I really think good working drawings are key. Detailed quantity estimates. I want to have good estimates, and I want them detailed, and I want to show them exactly where things are going to be done, and where everything goes. And I want to share that information with the trade that I'm using. The field audits are critical. One thing I find a lot is I want to make sure nothing is paid without field approval. When we're working with a schedule system, I want my supers to understand once they're advancing that schedule, they're paying the trade. Alex can back me up on this. I can advance the schedule and not pay the trade. That is the key point of control from my superintendent. And usually my younger players have to figure out that's their empowerment document.
Yeah, I love that. That's something that you can do, with our tool. That I can say the work is at least complete enough to keep my schedule moving, but I'm not ready for that vendor to be paid because they didn't clean up, they didn't follow their scope. Whatever reason, you'll come up with those reasons, so that way we can keep it moving, and that way they're not getting paid until they truly finish what they need to finish. And you mentioned the start package. Really important to have that in the system. And a lot of things that you're mentioning here tie right into it. We call it what we call our job start, where it has the working drawings that everybody can have easy access to. It has the buyer selections and color choices. If the buyer did multiple options, multiple addendum appointments, it consolidates it all. We don't want the field to have to hunt and peck through pluses and minuses to find out what's on the job. We want them to know the net effect of all the changes, and it's very easy to do that in one concise view.
Very true.
All right, some more general rules and best practices here. I know we got quite a few.
Yeah, and I'll make sure we're pretty much on schedule here.
Yeah,
partial deliveries are killers. I want to make sure and eradicate partial deliveries. I will never pay for partial deliveries. I want to get back orders out of my operation. If something's always back ordered, is my lead time incorrect? Or I got to talk to my vendors and talk about it. A lot of times on a window order, a tempered piece of glass is back ordered. So I want to go back to my plans and make sure my tempered glasses are consistent. I want to use it. I want to make it easier for my vendors to have that piece in stock. Hold your trades, your suppliers accountable. Again, my system will help me get through this. Holding trades accountable, superintendents accountable. A lot of this, to Alex's point, is all the communication. When I'm using a system, I can communicate. Certificate of completion is something we used to do years ago, and I'm starting to see a resurgence of this because trades are so busy and they're leaving without being complete. The builder that Alex and I were with recently, what we introduced was the checklist back to the framer because it's hard to get that framer back. So the framer after said, well, if you give me what you're looking for, I'll give it to my guys. This guy has an Hispanic crew. He even took that completion, that checklist and turned it into Spanish. It's very easy to do. and then your inspections. You got to inspect your expects. That is critical.
Yeah. Two things before we move on over to typical problems. I want to just quickly mention that, on points that you brought up, partial deliveries. That's a big one. That's really important. One of the things that we like to do to try and avoid that is if the trade's telling you that, we need to get paid for some of this up front, or it's just that, it's not a full delivery or whatever it may be, then what we always advise to do with our system is add another base draw code. Break it into more draw codes so they can still get some payment for some upfront delivery or whatever it may be if it's partial. But that way, we're not saying we ordered this much and we're only going to invoice half of it. No, we want to invoice the full amount at all times. So by able to break it up with different base payment draws, kind of give you some more flexibility and the ability to do that. It can be different for different trades too. And then the other thing that you mentioned, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, it's a very good point because you broke some of this up with that last builder so that it tied into the schedule to keep the one-to-one relationship for the schedule, install, and payment. Just simplified everything. We just eradicated the problem. Good point.
Yeah, I think they had it all lump sum to one big cost code payment draw. We just broke it out to a couple. I think it was 2 or 3. I don't remember. But yeah, that alleviated the problem right there and really made a big impact. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think is important, using a system like MarkSystems or any other system out there, MarkSystems really more than anything, because of the full integration with the purchasing and accounting, it is a communication tool. That's really what I like to think MarkSystems, it's a giant communication tool. We want to be able to keep everyone up to date with the most current information at their fingertips at all times. And with an all-in-one database system, you don't have to wait till midnight for information to push. You don't have to hit a sync button. Everything happens in real time so that everybody has that immediate information at all times. It's really important.
Good point.
All right, why don't we talk about some typical problems that we're running into?
Verbal purchase orders, what a disaster. Years ago, it's just, I promise you I'll get you paid. That's just that's very critical. General supplies, that's something that I don't really want to get into. I don't want just a whole lot of general. Again, bid management versus specified quantities on a purchase order, it muddies the water. Like I said, on that bid management pile, you saw all that lumber laying around. That happens all the time. When you're in the field and you're stepping over that pile of 10 sheets of drywall, you paid to have that drywall delivered. You paid to have the drywall installed, taped, and in some cases painted. That's critical. Switching trade contractors and suppliers. That's a big deal right now because our trades are so busy. With a good system, I can reassign POs fairly easily, okay? But you have to, again, communicate that. Change orders are the death of operations. I know in some cases, especially in more custom environments, change orders are critical. Have a process in play, how to deal with that. A lot of us are probably building spec homes. I have to have drop dead dates when a purchase order is going out. For example, and Alex can talk about this, if I have a kitchen, the drop dead date is, at electrical is when I'm ordering the kitchen. I don't want to release that PO and then have a buyer and then come back, well, I want to change order. That cabinet's already on site. It kills our trades. We talked about the variances is a problem. Purchase order is not available. A lot of times, as I'm working with builders, don't have good processes and systems. They release partial POs on houses and then have a lot of POs not released. That kills things. Warehousing, we don't see too much in most of our builders. Warehousing, I see with builders that just think they can bulk buy and then throw a bunch of lumber out there, not really knowing where it goes. That is a big time problem if you start getting into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I know, a couple slides ago we talked about, accountability and how important it is, and really, trying to keep stressing here. It's not about blame. That's a real big thing. But let's talk a little bit more about accountability. I know it's important.
Yeah, Alex and I are both big fans of not to punish, only to review. And I'd like to promote that I want the different teams having the same goal. I want my super and estimating and purchasing to work towards that goal and set goals together. Alex and I are working with the builder now, and we just keep resetting the bar. When we first really started with them, they were probably 4 to 5% on estimates. Literally in a couple months, we've got that down. The teamwork is huge. Another thing is, as I'm talking to it, I'm a big fan on praising in public. If I want to have a conversation with my superintendent that we've got to get a little harder on this. I need you to pay more attention to this frame. I'm going to have that conversation in private. That's not a public thing. Again, I'm a big advocate of the team approach. The builder that Alex and I are working with right now, they've actually got the variances on the wall and charting the progress, reducing the variances. So they're doing a great job, and they are absolutely using that we approach.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. You know, we love that team approach. All right, so we're getting close to the end here. Just a couple more slides. Probably a good time to talk a little bit about, you know, the difference between the centralized and the decentralized variance control.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of, Chuck always advocates, you know, don't leave it to the superintendent. They got too much going on. Like I said, I was a super. I know it's like you're out there in battle. I can't take the time to go research to find out, is this really a valid thing? So we're not fans of all of the superintendent generating this. I want him to build everything. Okay. Same thing with scheduling. You know, automated scheduling systems are awesome in the operation. I don't want my superintendent going around and doing things on his own, or her own. I want to be a master schedule that, you know, we all agree that I'm going to build the Alex model house, and I'm going to do it in 97 days. Chuck always says 97 days is the limit. On the 98th day, he gets bored. But I want to set that. I want to agree that that's the quantity, the time we're going to build that. Okay. Superintendent, I want a master of what my expectations are for quality. I'm a big proponent of, I want to build the house perfect the first time. I want my process, procedures, scopes, plans to build that house. When I build a house perfect the first time, it's so much easier. I want to. Why would I ever want to say, yeah, our target is I only want 20 items on an orientation list. I want to build a perfect house. No, I always kid. I want to engineer the turds out of that house. I only want it done once and do it right. Command centers, years ago, we used to have the phone. It was the hotline. Somebody was walking around the cell phone for the variances. But the command center is really having somebody back at the home office that's responsible for getting all these calls, responsible for looking at things. Okay, the builder that Alex and I were just with, they have one person responsible for schedules, one person responsible for variances. And that person has all that data and access at their fingertips. That's their job. Customer service and warranty. There's different ways of doing it. I like my superintendent to build the house. My preference is that they do the orientation. In some cases, there's a handoff. But it's somewhere you have to think about in your operation. Am I central and decentralized? Okay. Customer service can go either way. Different opinions on that. Alex, you got a couple of slides coming up. Can you talk about your upcoming slides, Alex?
Yeah, so, this one here, Ed keeps referencing these builders we've been working with, and we ran into a really interesting case with a builder where in the same community, they were reporting all this lumber theft and vandalism, really theft. It was missing from the job site. And, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know, should we hire, somebody to patrol every hour, put some security cameras up. And, we said, before we start doing that, why don't we start really drilling down? We were using two different framers in the same community. And when we ran the reports, what we found out was really interesting. We found out that it was really only one vendor that was having all this theft of their materials. The other vendor, we didn't have those issues at all. So, we decided.
Was he really unlucky, Alex?
Yeah. What's that?
Was he really just unlucky and only the thieves went to his job?
Yeah, you would think maybe, but no, maybe not. It wasn't luck. There was a little bit more to it. So, we told the builder probably a good idea to bring the vendor in and kind of maybe start asking some questions, maybe some hard questions to ask, but, questions that you need the answers to. And we found out that, sure enough, one of their guys that was, coming out and delivering it, they knew where it was being stored, and they were coming back and they were taking it and, selling it themselves for a little side job. They didn't think they were going to get caught, and turns out they did, and we had to fire them. So, really important to really be constantly drilling down into the reporting and auditing the trades so that something like that doesn't happen. It was really, really, eye-opening for this builder to see that. They really thought they were having an issue that really was tied to the trade. It wasn't really tied to the location or the community. It was very trade specific. So it was really, really interesting example.
Well, this was a good case where I was in the field looking at some of the variance reports, walking. In some cases, some communities we had material laying around, and then what I was communicating to Alex back at the office is when he kind of drilled down. And the drilling down again was all about how to sort through this by community, by super, by trade. And like Alex said, it ended up being the one trade that was the source of the problem. So, good illustration.
And once again, ties right back into what Ed was saying earlier. If we're not auditing these delivery drops, that's a big problem. And, if we are, then we can do these comparisons, the next day to see if anything is missing. And it makes it really, really easy to identify. So really, really important. All right. And then I think our next one here is some variance reason codes that you like to use as some of your examples here. So I thought we'd include that here.
Yeah, this is a good example. I mean, one of the things I see with builders is not enough or too much. I want to break them down by department, different software systems. Some are all alpha, some are all numeric, but really the idea is to break it down by different categories. And the only thing, Chuck and Evan, you've been using this for a while, and the only one I changed recently was, and I've been using this template forever, I just added in the sales and marketing. I added design center, contract issues, and concessions and sales, just so I could separate that company, a very large company, so that they could separate the two things. But this is a good example of how to set your reason codes up. Alex's system, I think, works slightly differently. I forget, Alex. Yours are numeric or alpha, I forget.
Oh, no, they're numeric, same way, 2 digits.
Okay,
so, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you need this, don't hesitate to reach out to Alex or myself. This is a great basis, and this is what we usually start with most builders on. So this is how I start getting my reason codes, and beyond that, it's down to by community, by house type, by trade, by super. And this is how Alex was able to drill down. When he called me in the field, he goes, "It's one trade, and it was one community, and that's how we identified the framework of the problem." The next slide's kind of funny. I use it in the seminar a lot. I was coming around the corner. We were down the Chesapeake fishing, myself and a couple of my guys. And the boat is called the Change Order. The original contract is the little boat. This lady wasn't happy. I came back around the corner and she kind of waved at me, but I don't think she was liking that too much. But it's a good illustration of what we're talking about. The variances are a huge bleed in the operation. So I think that pretty much wraps us up. And I think Monica has some time for us for some Q&A.
Yeah, before I kick it over to Monica, I just wanted to thank you, Ed. Really appreciate you taking the time today. I know I learned a lot, and I hope everybody that dialed in also learned a lot. If you're not already a Builder Partnership member but would like some information on how to become one, here's Ed's contact information. Please reach out to him. And if you're not a MarkSystems customer and would like some more information or would like to schedule a demonstration, here's my contact information. Please contact me. Thanks again, Ed. For anyone that knows Ed, we could probably keep talking variance for another 5 hours. But if you also know Ed, it's Friday, it's noon, so we're going to probably wrap it up here and kick it over to Monica.
Great. Thanks to both of you. This was a wonderful session, very informative, and I enjoy the back and forth, too, between you guys. Since we're done with the session, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. And if you have questions, we'll spend a few minutes. We have